Cliff Hacking, President and CEO of Electronic Products Recycling Association, better known as Recycle My Electronics. And today I had as my guest Diane Brisebois, who's the President of Retail Council of Canada and brings her 30 years of experience to our podcast. We're going to touch on a number of topics, including the fact that there's a trade war going on, which we're all aware of, some municipality implications, things that are happening with respect to paper and packaging regulation, and finally, some of the implications we see with respect to her 30-year career and the success she's had in managing a 65,000 body organization. So I'm very pleased to welcome Diane Brisebois with me here today. Thank you for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. I like being a distraction, is what you said, correct? Yes. Yes, I've been told that on occasion.
Yes, it's really an honor to have you here today. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what Retail Council of Canada is, what you do, what your mandate is?
Well, Retail Council of Canada, or we refer to it as RCC, is a not-for-profit industry association. Again, it's also a vertical association, which means that we only represent retailers. Mind you, there are suppliers, organizations such as yours that join the organization, or RCC, I should say, but the primary focus is representing, advocating, and bringing together the retailers from coast to coast. We have, as you said, about 65,000 doors that we represent, and from small, mid, and large retailers, both domestic and international, in every category. So that includes electronics, appliances, but also food services, pharma, and all the specialty retailers that you can imagine that you see in a mall or on a main street. The membership represents now about 78% of all retail sales in Canada, excluding gas and auto. So it is, we're fortunate that we have thousands of independent retailers, but also all the major players in the different categories. So obviously our focus is to be, and our mandate is to be, the voice of retail, ensuring that governments at all levels and other stakeholders understand the sector, work with the sector, and are also focused on seeing the sector grow and prosper.
It's interesting because you've been able to build a tremendous team. So I'm just going to bridge to that for a minute, because when I think about across the country, you've got representatives in each of the divisions across the country. If you think about Western Canada and Greg, or if you go to the East Coast and Jim, you've got some people who are really knowledgeable and who work on your behalf to interface with those governments. What kinds of challenges do they have with the governments? What kinds of things are you advocating these days?
Well, it's interesting that you mention that, because as a vertical association, we have the largest full-time government relations team in Canada. In fact, our team is nearly, if not as big as national organizations like the Chamber, for example. Yes. So it is unusual, but that's the commitment we made several decades ago, an investment that was well worth it. You mentioned Greg and Jim and many others. We understood that the only way we could affect change and also keep our members well informed and partner on key initiatives was having people on the ground who are knowledgeable. So, we have about 150 different issues on an ongoing basis. So think of all the issues affecting retail. So it could be store hours, it could be zoning, it could be how you import products, the labels, recycling, the environment. In fact, those files now represent close to 50% of the investment we make in order to support and help our members. It's taken, as we say, a lot of oxygen, but as you well know, Cliff, it's complex, and we manage for our members over 100 different recycling programs. I only wish they were all like EPRA. I only wish, we talk about you guys and the organization as the North Star. The biggest challenge that we have, and I know that, we'll talk about this a bit more, is the fact that we have so many different recycling programs across the country, regulated programs that all look different.
Yes.
And this is very challenging, very costly, and unfortunately very often does not help us meet or combine desired outcomes. So that's a great challenge. So our team has they have their hands full, but fortunately they work with organizations like yours, and that certainly puts a smile on their face.
Thank you for that compliment.
You're quite welcome.
So when you think back to the beginning of EPRA, so it was 15 or 16 years ago, and you and Lloyd had a vision to say, as we started to see the evolution of environmental programs across the country, there were 3 or 4 that came into place. And as an organization, you and the manufacturers were being challenged to provide people to sit on boards, to try and manage your way through all of this. And yet you had the vision to create a national organization, Electronic Products Recycling Organization. Why did you do that? What was going on at the time, and what made you think to do this?
Well, it's interesting because when Lloyd and I started talking about the challenge facing the sector, it was about the same time as we started reorganizing Retail Council of Canada. You may remember it because you and I have been around for a while, Cliff, and I say that in a nice way. There were a lot of regional associations, regional groups, and it was obvious that while they had good intentions, it complicated matters. So when the industry, be it suppliers and retailers together or just retailers, were facing a challenge, it took so much time to bring everybody together, and then nearly a miracle to get everyone to agree on doing things the same way together. And so having lived through that, we started talking about how can we ensure that we build a national organization. And the key was to harmonize, to work with the different stakeholders, work with government, to see if we could do that. And I think we knew that this, even if it would take 10, 20, 30 years, would become, as I mentioned earlier on, the North Star, the model for pros or for recycling organizations. And indeed it has. I mean, it's the, as I said early on, the example we use all the time for doing it right. At the end of the day, it is, if you can get everyone to follow the same line, we all know you get to your destination faster.
Yes.
You do it in a cost-efficient way, and you do it with great results. In fact, EPRA is the only program that we have been involved with where we have never had any government department in any parts of the country ever call us to complain. I only wish we could replicate that right across the different programs that we manage. And it was an understanding that the only way this could work for the benefit of consumers, businesses, government, and obviously the environment was really bringing everybody together and really singing off the same hymn sheet. I'm just delighted to be sitting here with you because it was a dream. There was a lot of work, but it in fact became the model, and it is still, as I said, the model today. So it was worth every effort.
No, I appreciate it. And one of the things that I would say is the harmonization efforts have, while there is still work to be done, have paid great benefits. We have a board for all of the programs across the country. In the early days, you were able to contribute people to that board, like Clint Melman from London Drug, who was fantastic. Lloyd Bryant, who represented the manufacturing part of the world.
Yes, he was amazing.
And the advice and counsel that I got as the first employee was tremendous from those men. And to this day, they continue to be in touch, even though they've moved on to greater roles in both cases. But it was very helpful to have their guidance. And I think your vision to get those kinds of people on the board in the early days was really helpful.
Well, I think that was part and parcel of the success of APRA. It was much easier for us because we didn't have to try to find member volunteers for 7 different boards, which was happening in tires and in paper and packaging, as you know, and name the categories, and so it was absolute chaos. In fact, with the PRA, because it was national in nature, we were able to really go after those who were engaged, knowledgeable, and most importantly for you and for me, for both organizations, who understood their role. While they were bringing their company experience, they were putting a combined industry hat on. And that makes a huge difference because you just move faster. There's a lot of insight. You make the right decisions. The egos stay outside the room. It was the perfect scenario. And, I'll never stop repeating it. I wish we could repeat that scenario. As you know, we're working very hard to try to do that in paper packaging, for example, and to have one pro for, we're facing a couple pros in just one province. So you can imagine the challenges of trying to convince people to do one pro across the country. But fortunately, we have a PRA, as I said, like as the North Star. So we're using that now even more to show the benefits.
One of the things that we've been able to do as a result of the vision that you put in place and the strength that you gave us on the board was we were able in the early days to be able to take on some additional programs. So we started out as kind of pure electronics. And it was just computers and cell phones and televisions and things like that, and printers maybe. But as that's expanded, British Columbia, everything with a battery and a plug. But they had a couple of programs like toys, electronic toys, which were running their own program. They came to us and said, could you do this on our behalf? And the board was supportive, and we took them on and have been very successful in that regard. And since that time, over the last couple of years, with great support from Greg especially, Greg Wilson in BC is just tremendous, and you know that. With his support and with AHEM's support, we were able to bring on board CISA, the program which was the small appliance kind of orphan, if you will, in British Columbia. We had already started small appliances in Prince Edward Island, and we're ready to go in Nova Scotia, but CISA was running its own standalone program. And again, with your help and your organization's support, we were able to take that program, incorporate it into ours, and the result is there's a big win there. We know, just in this particular year, because this is the first year we've had it in place, we have budgeted savings on a $7 million program of $1.6 million in that CISA program. And we know that in subsequent years, there's additional savings. So consumers win, businesses win. It's just, and again, this is all a credit to the support that Greg and your organization has provided.
Well, it's a credit to Greg and the folks who've been working on this at Retail Council of Canada, our members who've been supportive, and EPRA, you and your team, the volunteers. We all know that this can only work if everyone comes to the table. Everyone's prepared to put a bit of water in their wine. I know that it's an odd expression, but it is so true. We all have to give a bit to make sure that we can come together. I mean, EPRA, as I said, is the example we use all the time. And one of the reasons why we do is that it's recognized as one of the best programs in the country, and it opens the doors to government. And when we talk with them, I mean, it's normal for provincial and territorial governments to want something that's made at home. It is just a normal way of doing things. We're seeing it, in fact, on TV all the time now that we're talking about harmonization of regulations across the country. But on the recycling side, on the environment side, it has been the biggest obstacle. EPRA, because of its ability to bring the different provinces together, to also merge different programs, and to run it effectively. I mean, government wants to make sure that we meet our targets, that consumers are benefiting, and that climate change or recycling is the end result. And we are doing that with EPRA. And so it's really making right now our job much easier, simply because governments are more open, because of the national discourse, to looking at harmonizing. Businesses, you can imagine if you're a business with stores right across the country, if we had not been able to harmonize and have a national program, they would have to have compliance officers managing 10 to 12 different programs. Yes. In fact, many of our large retailers have told us that because of the other programs that are not harmonized, they have a whole compliance department. People who could be doing money that could be invested in making the stores more efficient, providing more benefits to consumers, and yet they're spending all this money, resources, and time trying to comply with different programs across different jurisdictions. You and I both know it makes absolutely no sense.
No.
And it's, at the end of the day, a disadvantage to consumers and a disadvantage to our combined goal of reducing waste. So hopefully we will continue to be using you and the program as the example that we need to follow.
We're happy to do that. And I would also, though, add that I think I look at Atlantic Canada, and I know Jim Cormier's had a great deal to do with this as well, but Atlantic Canada tends to work in lockstep. So when they add small appliances, New Brunswick is coming on with them in January, then all 4 provinces have small appliances. And then usually it's PEI, occasionally Nova Scotia, but usually it's PEI who takes the first next step, and then they all align, and Jim works with them to get them to that place as well. And so the result is that we end up with a common set of products that people can understand, so that when we advertise, we say, you can bring your electronics and your small appliances. Oh, and if you've got printers, you can bring those back. And so they just keep going. And Prince Edward Island has added just recently e-bikes. They've also added exercise equipment. So, as people look at these things, they look to see how can we make sure that we're harmonized in that way. And it would be really wonderful if we could get that spirit, and maybe there's an opportunity right now to look across the rest of the country to see if there's ways that the 2 central provinces could gain that same spirit. Because we see it out west. I see the prairie provinces aligned very much, and I see Atlantic provinces aligned.
I am always optimistic. I have also very healthy paranoia because we've always had to struggle with the 2 largest provinces and in different environmental programs. However, I also think, as you said, the time is now, because of the national discourse, because of the concerns over trade, and the provinces understanding, and territories understanding, that if they are working together, if they are taking down barriers, they will be better at growing their local economies and national economy. If that way of thinking just moves across different regulations, different programs, different ways of doing business, I think that we will finally see the light at the end of the tunnel for the larger provinces that tend to want to do their own thing. And so, I'm hoping that this happens sooner versus later, because the costs, we're over $2 billion now in costs. in fees that retailers pay. And as you and I both know, the waste, the duplication across jurisdictions is, look, it's my best guess, but I would guess we could take, if we were able to harmonize even the blue box, we would be taking 25% to 30% of the costs out
Yes.
of that big bill, literally. And so our combined efforts give me hope, because I think it's the right time, people are listening. Businesses are starting to show a bit of courage and speak out and help us advocate with the different governments. So let's cross our fingers.
Yes.
I hope it happens sooner versus later.
And so right now, what would be your biggest challenge? Is it paper and packaging? Is that what's causing you to stay awake at night?
That's one of the challenges. I think there are several that keep me awake at night. One is the lack of harmonization and the amount of time and effort that we invest in just managing all of the different programs, with the exception of EPRA. Two, it's the political nature of this file and the challenge that we have in not only convincing the provinces and territories to work together, but also the federal government. So what ultimately keeps me awake is the federal government now being much more involved in plastics, for example, is the perfect example, without looking at what's happening around the world, looking at best practices, and thinking about, okay, how do we harmonize? How do we get to that goal? But how do we bring everybody together? And how do we make sure that both businesses and consumers are not paying a heavy price simply because we are not coordinating and harmonizing? That does keep me awake, because we've seen that issue with regulation when it comes to food, when it comes to packaging, where the federal government often will work in isolation.
Yes.
And so, again, there's light at the end of the tunnel, as I said, because of that discussion that's being had in light of the trade dispute, in looking at ways to better manage regulation and assist businesses in growing. So, but that is definitely something that worries me quite a bit.
The plastics registry put in place by the federal government has been a challenge for us, Diane. Can you tell me a little bit about how you're seeing that and what kind of challenges it presents for retailers?
That is a big question. The plastic registry is what it says, a registry. But the challenge is, how do you define plastic, the elements of plastic? And so for EPRA, we're talking small appliances, we're talking electronics, but we're also talking about packaging, so plastic packaging, you name it. It is very complex. No one really understands what needs to be in the registry. And secondly, why we would have a registry.
Yes.
And so for those who are trying to figure out, well, what does that mean? Really is the federal government trying to keep track of all the different components within plastic, which products they go into, how they're used, I suspect, and the likes. It is nearly impossible unless you have harmonized the definitions and you're working with all the different stakeholders to make sure that the registry is useful. So that's what the plastic registry is. So if you're confused, you should be, because some of the best people in the industry are still not sure what the role of the registry is.
I am confused.
There you go.
So we're fortunate that we've been able to harmonize, as you've pointed out, but paper and plastic have a different challenge, and they have a number of pros that are operating. Can you tell us what a pro is and how that works?
So a pro is a producer responsibility organization. The Blue Box in Ontario, for example, used to be run very differently. 50% of it was funded by municipalities and 50% by industry. That has changed, and now it is 100% paid and managed by industry. And so we've had to form organizations which we call pros. And in Ontario, there's a pro. You register to become a pro, to be allowed, in fact, to collect and to run the Blue Blocks program. But what is challenging is the legislation in Ontario, as an example here, is not specific about the number of pros. The industry would like to see one organization manage all the Blue Box program in Ontario for cost efficiency, number one, but for many other reasons. Unfortunately, there are more than one pros, which means that everyone is trying to get a piece of the action. At the end of the day, it ends up costing producers more and consumers more. So when I talk about the challenges in paper and packaging in Ontario as an example, that's what I mean.
We have a continuum of pros, producer responsible organizations in the electronic space as well. There are actually 15 registered producer responsible organizations in Ontario, unlike most other provinces across the country. And so it does bring additional cost and challenges. And so we quite understand that even in the electronic space, but with paper and packaging and the volume that they handle, it's got to be even more complicated.
Well, imagine if you're the organization responsible for paper and packaging, you're going to go out and negotiate contracts with waste management companies, with the likes. Now, all of a sudden, instead of being able to negotiate for the entire province, you're negotiating for bits and pieces. So if I'm the supplier, I see that as an opportunity, and all of a sudden your costs go up.
Yes.
Having one pro is or one organization responsible for the program allows everybody to put their eggs in the same basket. And in this case, it's a good thing.
Yes.
Because it's good for consumers, it's a better program, it's run in a uniform way across the province, and it provides savings, allowing for innovation and research and helping us get to the ultimate desired outcome.
And we're having the same challenge in electronics because right now there is a situation in the Golden Horseshoe where one of the major cities, might be a steel city, has just gone to bid and has put out a contract which is really quite excessive in terms of the amount of money that's being paid for waste. So when you start to talk somewhere between $400 and $500 a metric ton for electronic waste, which has to be processed, it has a cost. The only thing that has any value would be the cell phone or the computer. Everything else that's there has cost associated with it. And so really what you're doing is inflating what consumers have to pay as a result of the recycling efforts that take place.
Think of think of plastic bags. Not only do we have to deal with the province, and in this case also with the federal government, every municipality is passing its own bylaws. Quebec is somewhat of a nightmare in that regard. And I say that because it's important for us to understand that while regional governments think they're doing the right thing, they are in fact making it more challenging and more difficult. Yes, we all wanted to manage the plastic bag issues, but let's come together, do it in a uniform, harmonized way. It's less costly, easier to manage, and it gets you to your environmental goals much faster.
Yes.
And that is the biggest challenge for all of us, and thank God for EPRA. We need to continue using your organization as the North Star to show governments and stakeholders it can work, and it works for everyone's benefit. If there was ever a time, this is it. We both know, because we've been on this file for a very long time, is that they often will work on their own. They'll put something together, they will consult after the fact.
Yes.
And we also know that at times many of us feel that consultations are just filling air. We have an opportunity now to speak to the policymakers at the highest level and to explain why we need to come to the table and consult before anything is put on paper, even if it's called a draft, because we all know what that means with government.
Yes.
It becomes reality.
Yes. They get married to the position.
So the plastic registry is a perfect example where it's reinventing the wheel, or it's trying to invent something that we may not need.
Yes.
And so we will only be successful if EPRA, RCC, and other organizations that are credible, that have a proven record in taking their responsibilities seriously, go to the highest levels of government. And we have a responsibility to provide a solution. Too often, organizations and businesses will go to government and complain or say, stop doing this. We have been successful over the many years because not only do we push, but we also understand they're trying to resolve something. And so the key, and I think that's where both organizations could work in the coming months and the coming year, is let's bring a solution.
Yes.
Let's bring something that they will see as win-win. And win-win for both policymakers, not just both, for policymakers, for business, for consumers, and for the state of climate, and for recycling, for reusing, for decarbonization, all of that. I think it is possible, but we need to look at the way we move forward with government, and I think we need to be more useful and more proactive.
No, that'd be helpful for sure. As you think now about your 30 years running RCC, when you reflect back,
I was only 12 when I started, just one at that point.
I know.
was only 12.
I think we were in school together.
I know.
Yes.
We were.
I
Remember that.
Yes. What would you say is your greatest accomplishment? What do you look back on and say, this is what I'm proudest of?
You know, it's so funny because I mentioned earlier on that I live with healthy paranoia. So I don't spend much time thinking about what I'm really proud of. I've spent most of my career, 31 years at Retail Council and 17 years with another industry association, so long time in running industry association. And it sounds odd, but I've spent much more time thinking about what I did not do well, or where I think we as an organization did not do well, or that my decisions were not the best decisions. So it's difficult for me to pinpoint what I'm very proud of. However, I will say that I was absolutely proud is not even the right word, astounded by the team and the members, you and your organization and others during COVID. We were the first organization to come out with a recovery playbook. It was called the Retail Recovery Playbook. It was digital. It was updated every day. We even had hospitals, governments. We opened the door. I was very proud of that. We decided this is a crisis. So if we're going to build this, and we did it with the Boston Consulting Group, God bless them. They were amazing. We opened the door to everybody, members, non-members, non-retailers. And we had webinars where we had 1,500 people every night because we worked very hard on developing programs with government. And it's seeing everybody come together and helping each other and saying, do you need this? Can I do this? That to me was my proudest moment if I had to pick one. But I also think it was the proudest moment for the industry. Because as you know, it's extremely competitive. But man, it came together and it was generous, it was thoughtful. And it was like a gift for me after so many years of running association. That showed me that through thick and thin, there's a lot of kindness and thoughtfulness out there. And while I don't like thinking of the pandemic as such, but it was kind of a realization that, we can get through pretty much anything if we work together.
Yes. And I attended a couple of those sessions, by the way, and they were wonderful. We used them to benchmark against what we had as a business continuity plan and to make sure that we hadn't missed anything. And you pick up things, you learn things, and there were things that we learned that were very helpful as a result of that. And you're right, if you think about an organization now, at least in terms of the office presence, and we're seeing a lot of back to the office with the bigger firms. Roger said an announcement just the other day that next year everyone will be back in the office early in the new year. We've seen RBC and others, Amazon, Google, saying back to the office. We're hybrid right now, and we learned to be able to be in a hybrid situation where we're a couple of days a week in the office and a couple of days a week working remotely. And we learned that ability through all of this experience.
Yeah.
It was the pandemic that caused us to be able to understand how we could operate, how we could be effective.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I ever get concerned about in those kinds of situations is new employees and how they pick up a culture, how they learn about what a company is and how they collaborate effectively with colleagues. And so we try and have our new employees come into the office on a regular basis to start with before we get to that hybrid model. But you're right, that whole kind of pandemic COVID experience was something that changed the way business is done in many ways, and it's got to have had a profound impact on retail as well.
It did, in fact, if you look at over that period, so if you go from 2019 to 2025, we've seen more consolidation. We've seen the big players get even bigger. We've seen renewed competition. And because of the way people live their lives, we've seen a changing pattern in shopping. So who would have thought that regional shopping centers would do better than city center shopping centers? And I do hope that Rogers and RBC and all the others who are mandating 5 days a week are able to sustain that. Because if you're Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, just trying to deal with the traffic getting to downtown is a challenge in itself. But saying that, I think, retail will continue to change, will continue to evolve. And I think that people's lives will continue to evolve. Sometimes I feel like I sound like my parents. Oh, when we were younger, we used to walk to school without shoes, in the snow. In the snow.
Uphill both ways.
So you look at the new generation and you go, they'll figure it out.
Yes.
I think they'll figure it out. And if they have good mentors, if they have people who take the time to understand them, to listen to them, and to support them in the way that works for them, I think we'll be okay.
We'll be all right.
Yeah, the only concern I have right now is the trade war and the challenges in regards to building a future for our next generation, and the example we set in regards to what's appropriate and what's not.
Yes.
But saying that, if they're surrounded with strong, good people who are focused on the things that we're focused on, I think they'll be just fine. Just fine.
Good. Well, I'd like to do a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you because I understand that you are joining the Canadian Retail Hall of Fame and going to be inducted very shortly. I also understand that by the end of this year, that you will move on to another phase of your life. And I have really enjoyed both speaking with you here today, but also over the last number of years, decades that we've known each other, the ability to work with you. And I hope that the leadership of RCC will continue to be as strong as what you provided. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. And I have no doubt. Kim Furlong is the new president and CEO who worked for us over 15 years ago. She's bright, she's full of energy, she's ambitious, and so I think that we're going to see a new retail council, a better retail council. That's what I wish.
Yes.
You don't invest 30 years of your life and walk away to other new challenges without wanting the best. So
Yes.
she will be very successful. I'm happy that I'm still engaged with the industry, and I'll be on a few boards and working on consulting projects for retailers and a few consumer goods manufacturers. So I think you never get retail out of your blood. You never get what we do, Cliff, out of our blood either. And so I'm happy that my next stage is staying close and being engaged and working with you. So, you know, we're as young as we feel.
Yes.
I'm 12 years old.
Thank you very much, Dean.
You're quite welcome.
The Welcome Diversion is brought to you by EPRA Recycle My Electronics. To find the location nearest you, visit recyclemyelectronics.ca. The future is in your hands. Don't let it go to waste.